Hello everyone. This is Pravin. Welcome to .NETgurukul.com for ASP.NET Core training. Today we are in module 1, like in introduction to ASP.NET Core, session 8. Okay, session 8 in ASP.NET Core execution pipelines in MVC and Razor Pages. Okay. So here are the agenda items. Like I'm going to introduce with request and the response pipelines. Okay, like in before hitting this routing stage, like we have something called as middleware. So we will go through the high level in the middleware pipeline. Okay, and later we will see the complete flow for the MVC and the Razor Pages execution path. Okay, so let's get started. So ASP.NET Core execution pipeline. So what is this execution pipeline? So in your request and the response, like what stages it has to undergo. So we have different route path for MVC and different route path for Razor Pages. Okay, so that need to be taken care. Okay, other like static files like in HTML and CSS or JavaScript. So nothing, like it just copies from the file gets copied from the server to the client. Okay, so this is the basic, like you need to understand like ASP.NET execution pipeline. Like it can be called as like the life cycle of MVC or life cycle of Razor Pages. Okay, so in this MVC forms, like in the input request, like when it comes to the input request, it first can be handled through middleware pipeline. So we can write our own customized middleware pipelines, okay, so that in order to be authenticated and authorized. Okay, so like in authentication, authorization or logging, okay, I can write the customized middleware. Okay, so once it passes through the middleware, like it goes to the routing, and for the MVC, if it is like MVC forms, it goes to the controller, like in the controller and the action method. Like we know these routings very much in detail, right, with your previous path, previous like sessions. Like in the routing, like in for the Razor Pages, like it goes to the folder or route based. Okay, and it will goes to the page handler methods. Okay, and it finally gives the response. Whereas in the HTML or JavaScript or like a .css class file, a copy will be given from the server to the client. Okay, so this is the basic, like in the execution pipeline. So this is the piece of code, like in middleware is a piece of code, like before going through the routing. So I wanted to make the user to be authenticated, authorized or login, or any kind of piece of code that I wanted to execute before the routing. Okay, so before this routing, I wanted to make sure that piece of code to be executed. So we will write a piece of code that can block this path. Okay, that can block this path. It gives the required access. Okay, either it should be like blocking or it should be accessing those, it should be executing that particular route. Okay, so we'll see with the demo to understand that in detail. Okay, so let me connect to my Visual Studio. Okay, I'm adding, like into previous session, like in session 4 also we have done this demo. Okay, if you can open this program.cs class file. So this is the piece of code like we have used, right, for before routing configuration. This is the routing configuration, right? Before, this is the routing, and this is nothing but your middleware. Okay, so middleware, like I just use this piece of code to block the certain routing. So I wanted to block the routing, and I written some customized middleware. Okay, like in giving access to this particular, giving access to move forward for the routing configuration, right? So this is the wait next. So which is the wait next is a statement saying that to move to the routing configuration. Okay, so before routing configuration, it is logging certain information, right? See, and after routing configuration also, it is logging certain information, right? So basically, like in your authentication and authorization, you can block any based on certain conditions. I can block that routing, or I can give access to the routing. So we will also do the simple demo, like in Razor Pages, because we already done for ASP.NET Core MVC, right? So we'll do for Razor Pages. We'll use the same piece of code. Okay, this is the simple demo, okay, for demonstration purpose. Like in later we'll go through the middlewares and in authentication, authorization, logging and all the stuff in detail for the next phase of module or phase on module. So for now, you understand, like this is the request pipelines, how the request pipelines undergoes. Okay, so before a particular routing happens in either in MVC path or in Razor Pages, there is a piece of code that should be executed at the middleware pipeline. See here. So this is the piece of code that get executed before routing. Okay, I hope you understand. Okay, I'm just copying this piece of code and I'm just having this new project. Since we have done for MVC core, so I will go for Razor Pages. Okay, I will implement the same uh, authentication and authorization. Okay, session 8, ASP.NET for pipelines demo. Say next. I just wanted to correct this one. Okay, create. So you must be aware of something called as middleware. Okay, so middleware is a place where you have this authentication and authorization process and all the stuff. So set a startup page. Okay, I just have this Razor project, everything like ready. Okay, so I have this thing Razor pages map. So what does it do? Like it goes to the routing, like in the pages folder. It searches for the pages folder and find the index.cshtml and gives the cs.html, right? It gives this process the particular cshtml and gives this pure html file. So I'll add the same piece of code for here also. This is a very simple demo on a very high level for you to understand the middleware. Okay. So here is the basic, like it is giving your index.cshtml on the pages folder. So I wanted to use this before this pages, like our routing pages, like I wanted to add this piece of code. Okay. So first what I will do is like I wanted to block this user, like in this routing. I wanted to block this routing. Okay. I wanted to block this routing. Say I just wanted to uncomment this. So I say that response write async blocked by middleware. Okay, this is a piece of code which is blocked by the middleware. So you cannot access the index.cshtml in the pages folder now. See, it will be blocked by the middleware. See, it is I'm unable to access the index.cshtml file now, right? So that's the way, like where you have this kind of a middleware. So I just wanted to give the access based on certain conditions. Like in future, like what I will do is like, so for certain condition, based on certain condition, I will block, and other certain conditions, so I will give access. Okay. So here, like I'm saying that await of next. So when it goes to the next, it goes to this map pages. Now it can access that index.cshtml file in your pages folder. Okay. See here, if you can see, you are able to access, and you, in the log also, like it is being logged your information. Okay, requested, middleware request, and response generated. So you have several files, right, in cs, html, javascript. Okay, all the stuff, like it is processing each and every request. Okay, in the www route, and finally it process the index.cs file. So that's what, like it will have multiple logged in information. Okay, for each and every file, like in each and every file. So you can have this middleware. Okay, for javascript or html, cs, for css file. So whichever thing, like I wanted to have this middleware, right, I can have this. So that's the main thing, like in understanding the execution pipeline. Okay, so we have in this thing, like input request, like in the middleware pipeline, now that we understand in a high level, right? So we also gone through the routing and MVC path, Razor paths, and static files, okay, in detail. So that's the session for today. Like in the next, we have done completed with the module 1. Okay, so module 1, you are familiar with introductions in ASP.NET Core. So second session, like next session, we'll go jump into the module 2. Okay, so module 2 is all about developing ASP.NET Core applications. Okay, so I hope you understand, like in what we have done in module 1. See, if we in the module 1, what we have done, I just wanted to recap complete module 1. So we know that basics, like in client server model, HTML basics, okay, the folder structure for both MVC and Razor pages, right? So later, like we dived into this ASP.NET Core, and we understand action filter controllers, model view controllers. We complete execution path, we understand. So in the routings also we learned in detail. Like in the Razor pages also we learned the same thing, like in folder structure and the routing. And like finally, like we know the pipelines. So all this phase one of module one, like we learned on a high level and very fundamentals. Congratulations for that one. So because like we covered basics very if you are strong in the basics, like it is will be very easy for you to understand in detail. So in the coming sessions, like I will use this authentication and authorization. Okay, I will, based on certain conditions, I will give access to the routing. Okay, and like in the model view controller, like in MVs, like in the model, like basically like we used a simple in-memory like list objects and all the stuff, right? So like we'll derive this data from the database, okay, like using like link queue or entity framework. So we'll develop that kind of model, okay. And like views and controllers, like in HTML tag helpers, like we need to learn that in much in detail. Like so on the controllers, in the all the stuff like in the action filter also we'll learn in detail, okay. So in the Razor pages, like we have to know on the tag helpers, that we have to know that in detail. So I will complete with the Razor pages in the much detail in the coming sessions, okay. So that's it for this today, okay. So let's catch up in the next session in module 2, developing ASP.NET Core applications. Thank you. Thanks for watching.